Go. Okay, so this presentation is brought to us today through our EAP, which is our Employee Assistance Program, which is one of our well-being benefits. We do try to coordinate these trainings about once per quarter, just because the EAP does provide us with great presenters who do specialize in a very wide range of different wellness topics. So there will be time at the end of this presentation for a Q&A. So just going to ask that you hold any questions that you have until the very end. And then lastly, just wanted to address that we did have a last minute change in our facilitator today. So I previously sent out a facilitator bio for the person we had originally, who was Aitza. But luckily enough, we were able to get Teresa to fill in for us today to chat about mental health. So with that, Teresa, I will pass it over to you so you can begin.
Thank you, Alicia. Only thing I would say is if you do have a comment, you can drop it in the chat as we're going along. So if you have a burning thought or question, we can put it in there as we go along. This whole idea of mental health, it's it's an interesting thing that it's what I call one of the gifts of the pandemic. It's allowed us to talk about mental health without a lot of the stigma that normally surrounds it. And we're using that model of mental health, kind of getting away from the mental illness model, that something's wrong, right? So we're getting, and the same way we go for checkups for our physical health to keep us physically fit, we're looking at things to keep ourselves mentally fit. And I say ourselves because we're also looking at being able to help those around us, our colleagues, our coworkers, our family members, our friends, right? If we see something, something's going on there, I think something might be going on there, right? I can reach out and talk to people about it. So when we talk about mental health, it doesn't only include our mental health, it's our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. And you know this, that if you're out of kilter on one of those things, it affects everything else. And we've been in a place for the last, every time I say it, the little bit of hair I have stands up, 2.5 years that we've been doing this, whatever this is, whatever this looks like for you. And we've been in a place of, a lot of us collectively, fear, anxiety, stress, depression, worry, right? It's been chronic. It's been ongoing. We seem to have gone from one thing to the next. And the other piece of that is where we were when the pandemic hit. So if we already had underlying conditions or we had stressful situations in our lives, the pandemic just took it to a whole other level. So part of our mental health too is how we feel, how we act, and how we handle stress in our lives. And we do entire trainings on stress management. And we talk about stress management. We never talk about stress eradication, stress disappearance, stress never come back. We talk about stress management because stress happens. So we have to learn how to manage it. Right? And mental health is important at every stage of our life. And it's kind of scary to see those words, mental health and childhood. We don't think of those as going together, but in a longer discussion, we talk about the number of children who, and especially since the pandemic, children that are struggling with mental health challenges based on the isolation and everything that's come with it. So looking at it then being mentally healthy from childhood, adolescence with its own strife through adulthood. And oddly enough, mental health issues are more common than we think. And they appear on a continuum. So you have people, you can know somebody and not know that they have a mental health challenge, right? Because they're being treated, whether it's through talk therapy or medication, right? And that's one of the underlying pieces of this, is letting people know that they can be treated and they can get better, No, it's not something they have to struggle with over time. So where do mental health challenges even come from? How do they show up? Uh, they're studying this constantly, this whole idea of, is there a genetic makeup to it? Is there a genetic background? Right? There's some brain chemistry. Is there a family history? And we look at that in terms of suicide and such. Any experience in life, right? That is a traumatic experience. Uh, Bereavement, divorce, and I don't know, a pandemic, right? Things like this that cause a trauma to us. Any brain injuries, if you know anyone that's had an injury to the front part of their brain, their personality changes, their judgment is gone. Any misuse of substances, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, legal or illegal, can cause mental health issues. And again, this being stressed with no relief, this constant state of chronic stress with no release or no relief, no way of managing it. So we want to look at warning signs, right, in ourselves and in those around us. And as you're looking at these, you may have seen these. And what happens when we're stressed normally? Normal stress, right? We tend to fall in two camps in extremes. Put in the chat for me, who's in the I'm so upset I can't eat a thing group? If that's how you respond to stress, put a yes or a me in the chat. I'm so upset I can't eat a thing. Don't worry if you're not there, because there's another group that I'm in that you can join me in, right? Who's in the I'm so upset, bring on the comfort food group? Yes, it does. It depends on the stress. Absolutely. Right. Yeah. And I see I have a lot of company in the other group. Yeah. Cake. And see, that's the other thing with that. We're very specific. We know exactly what we want when we want that comfort food, whether it's cake, whether it's chips, whether it's some kind of carbs. Right. But the point is, it's an extreme, and it's an extreme response to the stress. We also show up that way in our sleep. Right, absolutely. And if we can't get our hands on that comfort food, it is even worse, right? Uh, we fall into these extremes with our sleep. Who's in the I'm so upset I can't fall asleep group? And a lot of us have been there in the last 2.5 years. And if I fall asleep, I can't stay asleep. Because when I wake up, my mind goes right back to whatever I was ruminating over during the day. Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I forgot to tell you a little caveat. If I look like I'm not looking at you, it's me looking at the chat on my other monitor. I promise I'm not watching cartoons or anything. I'm looking at the chat. The other extreme, right? We have us, our overthinkers. We stay awake, we're ruminating, we're going back over it. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. The other group is, I just want to sleep all the time. Who's in that group? Right? I want to put the covers over my head, literally and figuratively. It is a struggle to get up in the morning. I don't want to deal with anybody or anything. Yeah, and I see a lot of us in either group. Sometimes we go back and forth between those groups, right? And the struggle is absolutely real, right? And so that not sleeping leads to no energy, leads to us being cranky and snarky with our colleagues and our family members, right? And that's just from stress, right? If we have other mental health issues, they can show up in these ways with over or under eating, right? People who have mental health challenges have physical body discomfort. They will go to the doctor. The doctor can do every test under the sun. We don't find anything. They are in actual physical pain. And sometimes a use of a substance, whatever it is, to calm down whatever these anxiety or other feelings that I might be having. Right? Look for and listen for people saying they are hopeless or helpless or acting in those ways. Right? And again, the mental health challenges occur on a continuum. They can be minor, to where you can function and hold down a job, and they can be severe to where you need to be medicated and hospitalized, and anything in between. People who hear voices, and they cannot function during the day, and these thoughts of harming yourself or others. And I will say this several times here. If anyone is expressing that they want to harm themselves, suicide must be taken seriously. That's not the time to say, you don't mean that. Look at you. You have such a great life. What do you have to be sad about? Mm-mm. We need to acknowledge that and try to get them the help that they need. So what can you do then to be supportive, right? Making sure you let people know that you can help and you do care, right? Whatever it is that they are struggling with, you are there to help them. Now, caveat on the help. Help looks different, right? What does help look like? Help when and let me say this, right? When you say to someone, here's words to use, because here's the thing. Here's a reason why we don't help sometimes, because we don't know what to do. We don't know how to support. I don't know what to say. I might say the wrong thing. You ever felt that way? I might say something that makes it worse, right? We use an I statement. This is worth the price of admission. If you don't remember anything else I say, remember this. We use an I statement because if we come at people with you, right? If we start to address what we think is wrong because we think we know what's going on, if we come at people with you, and you is usually punctuated with the pointy finger, right? You've been snapping at everybody. You're always in a bad mood. You're sleeping all the time. What's wrong with you? How do people respond to that? Put it in the chat for me. How would you respond to that if somebody came at you with the you pointy finger? Absolutely. Defensive, withdraw. I shut down, or I come back at you. What about you? How about you? You always and you never. We use what's called an I statement, because that's all I have is my perception. So I've noticed you seem to be sleeping a lot lately. I'm concerned. You've got to put that in, because I'm not calling you out to upset you. I can also say it to a coworker. I've noticed you seem not yourself. You don't seem as bubbly. I've noticed you missed some of our happy hours, right? Is there something going on? I'm concerned. How can I help? Now, here's the caveat with the how can I help. You are not their social worker. You are not their psychologist. You are not their psychiatrist. So you're not there to diagnose, right? How can I help comes in the form of we can make some referrals, especially at work. Well, you know, we have an employee assistance program, right? Here's the number for the EAP. Here's how you can get in touch with them. Right? And if they're struggling with, if they've been diagnosed and they're struggling with a specific challenge, help them research it, discuss the facts. The flip side of that is we don't stay on the internet looking at every mental illness known to man, because that'll take you down a path you don't need to be on. So we share and we discuss the facts and we treat them the same way, right? Because mental illnesses or mental health challenges are just that. So we treat them with respect and we let them know that the illness does not define them, right? The same way we wouldn't chastise someone because they were diabetic or because they have cancer. This is not something they chose. It's not something they asked for. This is a challenge they are struggling with. And we're here to be as supportive as we can. Questions, concerns, thoughts, again, feel free to drop them in the chat. So what are some wellness tools that can help you yourself have a positive mental health outlook, right? You want to have a support system. And that's why the number of mental health challenges rose during the pandemic, right? Look at this, have a support system and stay connected. Well, the pandemic made us be unconnected, or at least it tried to make us not be connected. I heard a psychologist say he wished they had never said social distancing. He said they should have left it at physical distancing, because that social distancing really took on a different lens. But see, us as human beings, resilient that we are, we figured out ways to connect, right? We figured if we could have Zoom work, we could have Zoom happy hour, right? So, and yes, that is correct in the chat. People who already had pre-existing conditions, such as depression, such as anxiety, people who lived alone had a much tougher time because, we call people our work family. So for a lot of people, work is their social outlet. Work was their time to be with others. And literally overnight, boom, that was cut off. Right? So we had to figure it out, ways to stay connected. Right? You also want to find ways to focus on the positive. Right? And learning to be resilient, which we did. Again, right? You told us we can't get together with our families for the holidays. Yes, we can. Oh, does anybody have, let me know in the chat, does anybody have I will call them the elders for today, the elder relatives that learned how to use Skype and FaceTime? They learned how to use an iPhone or an iPad for the first time so they could see their children and their grandchildren, in some cases, their great-grandchildren. Somebody told me the other day their 84-year-old mother won't stop texting them now. Good. That's a good thing. Um, it's important. It's ways that we found to reach out. So we did virtual holidays because we're social beings. We're meant to be together, right? So it definitely has helped us. Uh, One of the other things is staying physically active, and they're doing so much research now on dementia and Alzheimer's. And 10 to 20, 30 minutes of walking a day, some kind of movement. They do tests, they do studies on seniors who belong to senior centers versus those who don't, right? That's social activity. It keeps the brain functioning. A garage Christmas, I love it. Yeah, see, we figured it out, right? That's what it's all about. That's what this resilience is about, right? Oh, I'm reading this from the chat. Thank you. Uh, I'm reading from your colleagues. I just moved to New Hampshire alone and knew no one. I was stuck alone for 2 years. It was the worst depression, and EAP saved me. Yeah. So it doesn't have to, I'm here for EAP, it doesn't have to be EAP. If some people are a little leery about EAP because it's connected to work, find support groups. Whatever the challenge is, there's a support group for it. If you belong to a faith-based community, speak to your pastor, your rabbi, your imam, whoever it is. The pandemic has allowed us to say it's okay to not be okay. And here's a number you can call. The other interesting thing is volunteering. When I step outside of myself, it's not all about me. Right? I get outside of myself. And again, volunteer work was shut down for a while. Things are opening back up. Not only do I realize it's not all about me, I start to come from that grateful place. When I go and volunteer at the food bank, I am brought up to, yes, I'm going to have a full pantry when I go home. Gratitude also keeps you in that positive place. Right? And we use these coping skills every day. Right? Little things, big things. We're going to keep using these skills. If you have young people in your life, teach them to be resilient. And a lot of them has learned this from us in the past 2 years. Right? So how do we cope with stress? We have to cope with the everyday stressors. And it's interesting, someone said this, a dear friend said this to me last night, knowing what we control, what we can control. And that has to do, that old serenity prayer, control what you can, the other stuff you gotta let it go. Right? Ignore the negativity where you can. Right? Try to surround yourself with positive people. We do a training, and then one of the questions says, "Did you begin or end a relationship during the pandemic?" And at first, you go, "Oh, end a relationship? That's terrible." No, we used to call them toxic relationships. Those people that draw out our energy. They don't mean us any good. They called under the guise of seeing how we were, and then the conversation went to all about them, right? So we surround ourselves with people who are supportive, people who are contributing. It says meditate and breathe. Find the calming practice that works for you. Like if you can't sit still like me, you guys caught me on a good day. If you can't sit still, there are walking meditations. Get outside. I'm in New York. We're in fall, right? Get outside, go for a walk, look at the changing leaves, listen to music. I used to say listen to calming music. Um, I found that whatever's calming for you. I had a gentleman in another training tell me he loved to blast Metallica. It works for him. I just reminded him to put in headphones. Right? Find what works for you. Make sure, and even though we're having these sleep issues, make sure you're getting enough sleep. You want to avoid anything artificial, though, that's going to help you sleep or you think is going to help you sleep, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, legal or illegal. Right? You don't want to go down that path. Right? Exercise, I say this also about exercise. Find what's you. If you hate the treadmill, don't go on the treadmill. Walk outside. Go take a Zumba class. As I said, things are coming back. And you get a twofer if, remember, we're trying to reach out and be with people. If you walk with your best friend. So we're getting the social piece and we're getting the exercise. Try to combine things. Speaking of combining, that 5 servings of fruit is tough. Throw it in a blender, make a smoothie. Right? If you don't like that vegetable by itself, throw it in the smoothie. The other stuff will camouflage it. Right? Little tricks, little things, believe it or not, they help you cope and deal with the everyday stressors. Work-life balance for some of us, it was easy because we worked from home. Some of us took it to the extreme, right? We were home, so we were doing the training, we were doing the laundry, it was too much. So find what works for you. Also self-care, whatever self-care looks like for you. It's another gift of the pandemic. It took self-care from that woo-woo, oh, that's ladies going to get a mani-pedi, to no, it's me taking care of myself, whatever that looks like. Does it mean that I unplug earlier? Does it mean I shut the TV? Does it mean I say no to things? Right? Little things build into how we can take care of ourselves. Yeah, meditation podcasts. By the way, if there's a podcast or an app or something that you use that you have found helpful, please share it in the chat with your colleagues because I find we know a lot more. I don't know a lot. I know a lot, but I don't know everything. Let me rephrase that. I know a lot, but I don't know everything. Um, yeah, sometimes we need to just have our separate space. Um, yep. Making it a practice, meditation, right? Mindfulness practices. And they're called practices for a reason. If you haven't meditated before, you're not going to get up and meditate for 30 minutes tomorrow. Try 5 minutes. And if it doesn't work today, maybe it'll work tomorrow. Be patient with yourself. Right? Yeah, I'm seeing insight timers, candles, incense, aromatherapy, whatever it is, try it. Right? Make sure you are making time for yourself. Alicia and I were talking about that before you guys came on. Scheduling time during your day. Right? Uh, yes, and I tell people that live in one-room apartments, shut the laptop, go outside, walk around the block, drive around the block. You are leaving work. And when you come back, you are coming back home. We're not going back on to check that one email because you know what happens then. We get sucked into the rabbit hole. Always try to come from a place of gratitude. What's good about this? Right? Start your day or end your day with that. What are 3 good things that happened today? Right? Now, some days we got to dig deep. Some mornings might be my feet hit the floor this morning. My teenager didn't drink out all the milk, so I have milk for my coffee this morning. And I remembered that the webinar was at 12 and not at 1. That might be it. Make it a practice, right? And then it becomes a habit. Focusing on what is good about this. Right? And maintain a positive attitude at work, in your personal life. You might be the person that people look to. Right? And give yourself, I like that word, give yourself permission. I can take a break from this. It'll be there when I come back. Give yourself grace, someone told me in another training. And the 5-minute journal, I'm seeing some great tips in the chat, so please make sure you're taking a look at that. So some additional resources, again, you can start with your EAP, your primary, a therapist, a support group. No shame in reaching out for help. Right? And again, if there is an emergency, if there is a suicidal discussion or talking about, or something you're sensing, make sure you reach out to 911. There is also 988, which is now the direct suicide hotline. Anthem is there for you as your EAP. Think of Anthem like Vegas. What happens at Anthem stays at Anthem. So it's 800-647-9151. And when you go to the website, it's anthemeap.com. Your login is SNHU. What I say about the website is take a look at it before you need it. So you can look at it and say, oh, this is what I need. They have that, because there is a plethora of information. And sometimes when we're stressed or we're in crisis, we're not sure where to look. Share this information with your colleagues. Sometimes EAP is the best kept secret. Right. So again, it's anthemeap.com. Your login is SNHU. And you also have some well-being resources through SNHU.
Yeah, so super quick, before we get into the Q&A, I did just want to point out our other well-being resources. So as we mentioned, this presentation is brought to us through our EAP, but in addition to the wonderful services that they do provide, I wanted to remind you of everything that we do offer. And where you can locate that information. So this is just a quick reminder of the well-being site. I will put this link in the chat. So if you click on the well-being benefits and resources on this page, you will find information for our EAP, as well as all of our other offerings, including Insight Timer. I know I saw that come up in the chat. So if you're interested in any of the other resources we do provide, definitely take a look at this site. Just again, wanted to make sure you know where to locate everything that we offer. So with that, we can begin our Q&A. So feel free to either jump off mute, raise your hand, that little team setting, or use the chat so we can kind of answer any questions that you might have.
And while you're doing that, our little QR code is on the screen. So if you hold up your phone camera, it takes you to an evaluation of today's session and gives you an opportunity to put in some other topics you might be interested in attending in a forum like this. How do you support someone who is struggling when you yourself are struggling? Great question. That is the old airplane analogy. Put your mask on first, right? You need to take care of yourself first. So make sure you are getting some care for you, and then you can help the other person get care. And know this, they have to want help. We may want to offer help, and people may not want help. So we have to we can keep being supportive, and we use those I statements, right? It seems to me, or I see that you're struggling. What can I do to help? And if they say no, they don't want help, as hard as it is, we have to leave it there. but we provide information. And by the way, Anthem is there for you as employees, but family members as well. So if you have family members who have a challenge, they can absolutely tap into the services as well. Any other questions or thoughts? I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your day for this very important topic. You did a great thing today for yourself, and if anyone else that you are taking care of, please take very good care of yourselves, and if you can, someone else, and enjoy the rest of your week. It has been my pleasure. Thank you, Alicia.